Hey everybody, welcome to Mammoth Interactive's YouTube channel. First of all, I want to thank you for watching this video. And remember that this channel doesn't do Patreon. Instead, we sell our digital courses down below. And every single dollar that we get from the products you buy below goes into making more content. The best way to help out this channel and Mammoth Interactive is to subscribe to Mammoth Interactive's huge library of content. Get thousands of hours and hundreds of courses for a low price down below. We have a monthly option and a yearly option. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the video.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to our course. In this lecture, we are going to begin our project of building a simple website with vanilla JavaScript that includes a Chartjs chart. So join me at the online code editor jsbin.com. This is the free online code editor we'll be using for this project. You can also use any other code editor that is online or on your computer. Here, if you go to jsbin.com, you will have an HTML page already set up for you. So here we have HTML, which is a markup language that is used to render elements of a web page and build out the structure of your web page. First, you have the document type tag to specify that this document type is HTML. Then you have an HTML tag to open up all of the HTML that will be written. You also have a corresponding closing HTML tag. Inside of the HTML tag, you have a head tag, which contains metadata, and you can also load scripts in the head. We have one piece of metadata that is the character set used in this file. UTF-8 is the default English keyboard character set. We also have a metadata tag that specifies that the content width of the viewport should be the same as the device width, which means that the page will resize itself to fit whatever device is currently being used. We then have the page title, which appears in the tab of the browser. After the head tag, we have the body tag, which is where you could place HTML elements that are the visual elements of the page. So currently I have my HTML tab open, but if I click on output here at the top of JSBin, I can see a preview of the web page that this HTML creates. Currently there's nothing in this body, so there's nothing in the output. But if I put something into the body, like a paragraph with a P, I'll open and close the paragraph tag. Then inside of that paragraph tag, I can say hi, right? So there I have my opening and closing paragraph tag with the text inside. And in my output, look at that. You can see hi is being rendered in the output. So that is how we can render content using this HTML tab. On JSBin, we also have a CSS tab where you can write style for the website. You have a JavaScript tab where you can write JavaScript. So if you call console.log, you can log a message to the console like welcome. Then if you open the console tab, currently we have nothing in the console, but if you press in the output run with JS, you'll see welcome will appear in the console because we logged that out via JavaScript. All right, so for now, all we have to have open is the HTML tab. All right, here we are going to load in Chartjs via a CDN, which means a content delivery network. We will load Chartjs in via a link. Later in this course, we'll look at how we can load Chartjs via NPM when we actually build a project that's offline. But for now, we're building a project that is using an online code editor. And even if you use your own code editor, you can also use a CDN or a link to load the Chartjs library. This will give you access to different content in the Chartjs library. So to load that in, you can either load the script for the library in the body tag or in the head tag. If you load the script in the head tag, it will load before the body is rendered on the page. So that's what we will do. Well, let's put it at the end of our head tag. We'll use a script tag here that's opening and closing to here open up a new HTML element. This is a script, meaning that we are going to be loading something in. We could also you leave it like this and then write JavaScript in here. Here, we're going to then put a source for the script that we want to load. So we're using a script tag because we are going to be loading in a JavaScript file, a script. And that script will be the Chartjs library. Then we can use the link to a CDN that loads in Chartjs. We have cdn.js deliver.net/npm/chart.js. Then we can specify the version 3.5.1 and /dist/chart.min.js, which means that we are loading a minified version. If you want to find a different CDN to Chartjs, you can do that. Just search in any search engine Chartjs CDN and you'll see links for different links you can use. Okay, now currently if you run your project, you won't see anything because we just loaded in the script, which means we can now put it to use. Okay, one more thing for setting up the HTML page of the website is we need a container for our chart. So inside of my body tag, I'm going to make a new canvas element. So let's open and close the canvas HTML tags. In here, we're going to give this canvas a unique identifier. We'll call this our chart container. That way we can find this element and this element only by its ID, because you can only use an ID on one element of the page. All right. Now, we have set up our HTML page. Coming up in our next lecture, we are going to write the JavaScript to build out a chart with Chartjs. So join me in our next lecture where we are going to build out our chart. Hello everyone and welcome back to our course. In our previous lecture, we set up our HTML page for our project. And in this lecture, we're going to add a chart to the project. So open up your file in JSBin. And make sure, by the way, to save often. You can create an account and save your files, or you can just download your code as well. Because otherwise, if you leave the page, JSBin will remove the work that you wrote. You can also find the source files at the end of this section where we have the source files, the work for every single lecture. All right, so we have our HTML web page set up. Now we're going to open up the JavaScript tab. If you're using JSBin, open the JavaScript tab. If you are using an offline code editor, then just create a new file called index.js or anything you want. Then at the just before the body, you would have to reference your script here with index.js. So here you're referencing a script that you actually wrote. So that is how you can reference a script tag. Here on JSBin, you don't have to reference anything. It's already referenced for you internally. Another option is to open up script tags that are opening and closing like this in the body of your HTML, and then to write all your JavaScript in there. So you have multiple options. For JSBin, we're just going to write the JavaScript code in the JavaScript tab. So the first thing we have to do is we have to get the context of where we are going to be putting our chart. So for that, we're going to go to the JavaScript and use the function document.getElementById. The document refers to the HTML document, the web page. We're going to get the element that has the ID chart container. And note that in JavaScript, you can use either single or double quotes. All right, so here I am getting that chart container. That is the canvas that I created in HTML. Now we can close the HTML for now. So here we've grabbed the chart container. That will give us the canvas. So this we can save as our canvas variable with the keyword let. And okay, if let is not available in ES6, then just use var. Okay, there we go. Then we are going to take the canvas and get its context. we're getting the 2D context. So this is just syntax or convention for how you grab first a canvas HTML element via JavaScript and then get its context, not content, but context. Then we'll save this as our context. All right, so we want to have the context because the Chartjs library needs to know where to draw the chart on the web page. All right, then here to create a new chart, we just use the keyword new and then chart, and pay careful attention to the casing. JavaScript is case sensitive. So we're creating a new chart object here. We have to pass in an argument of the context. Then inside of curly brackets, we can pass in the different properties for the chart, like the type of chart, like a bar chart. Okay, so here we've created our new chart in that context. Now, how do we actually make this appear? If we go to the output and run with JS, we won't actually see anything appear. So we need to pass some data to the chart because currently the chart doesn't actually know what it should be drawing. A chart needs data. So after the type, we're going to pass a data property here. And this will be another object, so with curly brackets. And here we're going to pass in the labels for the bar chart. And let's just keep it simple with a couple of labels like A and B. All right, so that will be the labels for our data. Then we will have some data sets. So that will be just after the labels, we'll pass in data sets. Make sure it is plural. And this all comes from the Chartjs documentation. So if you are curious about how this is set up, just go to the official website for Chartjs. Okay, next for data sets, we have a list of data sets. So we need to pass in one object as our first data set. We can have a label for the data set itself, such as my data. Then we can pass in the data itself. This will be a list, so we use square brackets. And we can pass in some numbers here like 1 and 2. Okay, that will be the data. Now we can go into our output and look at this. We don't even have to press run with JS. Often it can just automatically appear for you. Then if you update something, like if I change this from 1 to 3, it will auto update. If it doesn't auto update, then run with JS. Okay, so here, look at this. In our output, we can see we have a chart. At the top of the chart, we have the label My Data. On the y-axis, we have from 0 to 3. On the x-axis, we have A and B. If you hover over the different bars, you can see My Data 1, My Data 3. So that is how you can build out a chart here in JSBin. Okay, we built out a simple bar chart. If you go into your JavaScript, you can change up the numbers, like you can change them to 12 and 15. And your output tab will adjust accordingly. So now we have A is 12, B is 15. We can also add more entries to the data. We can add more labels. Like I can add A, B, and now C. And in my output, I can see that the C tab is empty because I didn't actually give it data yet. So to give it data, I just have to add another entry here under my data list. And then look at that. Now I have A, B, and C. All right, so look at that. I've already created a bar chart. And I can change this to be more descriptive about something, like perhaps we have Excel. Then we have another label here of web development. Then we can have another label, machine learning, just to make this more descriptive. And then instead of my data, we'll call this sales per course. Okay, so we have 3 courses and we're looking at the sales per course. Then we have the data, which we could change to be whatever we'd like. Okay, so here we can see we can adjust the JavaScript and that will adjust the output. Awesome. Okay, so this is our bar chart. Coming up in the next lecture, we're going to look at how we can change different properties of this chart because there is a lot that you can adjust. You can fine-tune the chart to look however you'd like, and there are lots of different types of charts as well. You can find all of that information at the Chartjs documentation. But join me coming up in the next lecture. We'll look at how we can change some properties of this chart so that we're not just using the default visual. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our course. In our previous lecture, we learned how to build a bar chart with the Chartjs library. In this lecture, we are going to learn how we can edit properties of the chart. So join me back in your JavaScript for the project, and we will get started by changing some global properties of our chart. So before we create our new chart, we can actually change some global defaults of the chart. So we can grab the chart object from Chartjs and change defaults, like the default font dot size. We could change this to 20, and look at that. The text size is going to dramatically increase on our chart. So now we can see the text size is a little bit bigger. Okay, we can open up JavaScript and the output and be able to see that. Let me zoom back in here. We can make the text size a lot smaller, change it to 2, and look at that, it's barely readable. Or make it 30 and then it's huge. So you want to find this balance for the text size, because if it's too big, then it does change the whole chart appearance, because the chart will expand. The chart is responsive by default. So this is what it would look like on a small mobile phone. This is what it would look like on a larger screen like an iPad or a laptop. All right, so there we go. That is how you can change one property, the font size. There are many more global properties you could change, like chart.defaults.font.family. Let's say we change this to times. Okay, then that would change the font family or style from the default, which is sans serif, instead to Times New Roman. So look at that. Now we can see the font used throughout our chart is different. It's now serif, so it has these little edges to it, and it's specifically Times New Roman because that's what we're using. We're using times. You could change that to anything you want, like Helvetica, for example. You could also change padding on the chart with chart.defaults.layout.padding, and that is going to change the space around the chart. So let's say I set this to 100. Okay, look at that. Now there's quite a lot more padding around the chart. The chart itself is smaller because there's more padding around it. Okay, so let's put some padding around the chart, like 1. We don't need that much. So this is an example of how you can use global options to change the chart's appearance. That will change every chart on the page because you're changing the chart object defaults for the current page. What if you wanted to change the actual chart itself, an individual chart? Well, you can go under datasets and set more properties other than just the label and the data. For example, you can have a background color for each of your bar charts. So if you override background color, it will go from gray to now black, and also a darker gray for the title or label. Okay, then you can set a different background color for each bar. For example, I could use a hex color code. Let's just choose a random hex color code here, like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so now all of them are blue. This dark blue, this navy. If I add another one, then we are going to have a different color. So let's just change this. So look at that. Now, Excel and machine learning are blue, but web development is purple or violet. Why? Well, because we set 2 colors for background color. So the first bar in the bar chart will take the first color. The second bar in the bar chart will take the second color. And then the third bar in the bar chart will just take the first color. But I could add a third color here. I could add as many colors as I'd like. I can add a third color. Like, let's just choose something random again. Okay, a random hex color code, and look at that. Now machine learning has this red color to it. Now what if I added a fourth one? Well, I don't even have 4 bars, but I could add a fourth one here for testing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's just give this a random hex color code, and then just nothing happens to the bar chart because now nothing has a fourth color. We don't have a fourth bar, so that just is not even necessary. We could also set the border color of our bars here. So let's just add another property, which you separate with a comma. Here I'm going to set the border color property to a value, like let's do 000, a hex color code. Then we want to set border width to make it more easier to see. Okay, and look at that. Now we can see we have a border around different elements of our bar chart, like the bars and also the label here for the top. Okay, so we can also see that at a larger screen, like so. Those outlines, the borders make it a little easier to see, so it's nice. You can also change the hover border width and color. So what happens when you hover over top of these bar charts? You can change those as well with just hover border color and hover border width. There are many more properties and options that you can set of your chart. And you can find all of those at the Chartjs documentation or the official website for Chartjs, because it's hard to memorize exactly where all the different properties should go, but the documentation will tell you how to access the label, how to access the data, etc. Later on in this course, we're going to look at more properties that we can change, but this is enough for our starter project here in JS bin, building out our chart here using vanilla JavaScript and the Chartjs library. We have been able to build this bar chart for sales of a product, and we've been able to also adjust different properties of the bar chart. So congratulations everyone on making it this far. Coming up next, we're going to start a new project where we're going to build a React application with a chart inside of it with the Chartjs library. So first we'll have a prerequisite on React, then we'll install Node and Npm, because instead of getting Chartjs via a link, we're actually going to import it into our project. Then we'll build a new React app, and we will learn how we can put a Chartjs project into the React app. So this has been our introductory project using vanilla JavaScript, and I'm excited to take you to our more advanced project coming up next. So join me in the next section.
Hello everyone, and welcome to day 6 of Hello Coding. Today you're going to learn how to build a website with Node.js. We're doing an introduction today, and you'll learn a lot more about Node later on in Hello Coding. We're going to get started by learning what is Node.js. Node.js is a JavaScript runtime that has several uses. One is to run a server. So Node.js can create a server and listen to incoming requests. This means that instead of building only local websites that you can visit on your computer and perhaps others could visit on their computer, instead you can build a shared site. So you can have one server with site content, and then different users can join the same instance of your site. This will open up a whole range of opportunities for you, because now you can build multiplayer sites such as multiplayer games or chat, or any website that you want to be updated live based on interaction from users on different computers. So now not only will you know how to build the front end of a website, which is the user interface, but you'll also learn how to build the back end of a website. So you'll learn how to create a server with Node.js and handle the back end of a server. So things like the database and any changes that you want to make based on one client or one visitor's interaction. As well, another use of Node.js is handling business logic. So with Node, you can connect to a database and handle requests from your site visitors. A database is used to store site data. For example, you could store profile information, you could store usernames, passwords, accounts. You could store different products if you were making an online store. So Node.js not only can build a server, but can also handle business logic. As well, it can validate input, so you can make sure you don't get invalid inputs or people trying to hack into your website. Another use of Node.js is to send responses. So your clients, your visitors will come to your website and send requests of where they want to go. And then you use your Node.js server to send a response. So you can send the user to different pages of your website. You can connect them to a chat room. You can join them into the game. And these responses come in many forms, such as rendered HTML. So your visitor will request to go to a page, and with your server, you will send them to a certain page of the site. This is different from just sending the user to a page locally via a reference link. Now we're going to learn how to send users to different pages with a server. And this is required for almost all websites because some websites can be standalone, just visited on their computer if they're static. But for any complex project, any complex website, you will need a server because you'll have multiple visitors and you'll have to get data from them and then update your website based on their data. For example, a visitor could come to your website and make an account, and you have to use a server to store their account information and then to send them to their account page, to send them to their shopping cart, to allow the user to visit a site, make a change, and then see that change the next day. For example, a to-do list that lasts for days on days instead of just being immediately cleaned when you refresh the page. And you do all of that with Node.js. There are, of course, alternatives, but Node.js is a very popular JavaScript runtime for creating a server. So you can send responses, including data like JSON data, which is a data type, and much more, whatever response you want to send. Let's discuss more about the client and server model of computing, because this can take a bit of time to grasp if you've never heard of it before. The client refers to any visitor of your site, and they are going to ask for services, meaning they want to go to a page, they want to make an account, they want to play a multiplayer game. And the client is going to send a request whenever they join or visit your website. They're sending a request to your server. And the server performs services in response. For example, it can make an account for the client, it can connect the client to a live game, and etc. Any task that your website needs. So in terms of a website and web development, the browser is the front end. It's the client. Whenever the user pulls up their browser and types in your website, they're instantly going to become a client. Now, the web server, that's the behind the scenes of your website. There is one web server, and then there are multiple clients. So any client that visits your website will connect to the same web server. And they do this online by using what's known as an HTTP request. And then the server sends an HTTP response, meaning these requests and responses, they're happening over the web. All right, and with the client is written in JavaScript, of course, with HTML, CSS as well. Perhaps you're using React, perhaps you're using Vue as your front-end framework. The browser is written in JavaScript, and typically with web servers, they can use a variety of languages like PHP, C# and Ruby. And so that is an option for making a web server. You could create a web server in C#, for example, which is another programming language. But with Node.js, it allows everything to be done in JavaScript. So the browser, the front end of your website is written in JavaScript, and so is your web server. And that's the other benefit of Node.js, among all of its benefits, is that it allows you to work with JavaScript both on the front end of your website and on the back end of your website. JavaScript on the server looks like this. A person visits your website and they become a client, and then they send requests to the server to launch a site. And the server uses Node.js to do that. Then, after the server has received the request, they send the response back. So they send back the HTML page of dogs.com, for example. As well, the server can connect to a database. It can authenticate content, such as making sure that the password was entered correctly, making sure the user actually has an account. It can validate any input and perform other business logic. So the server can do quite a lot, and Node.js can as well. Other features of Node.js, not just creating a server. Because Node.js is a JavaScript runtime, it means it can do a lot. It can create utility scripts, it can provide you with build tools, and much, much more. But for just starting out, we're going to learn how we can use Node.js to create a server. So later on today, we're going to learn how we can build a website and use Node.js to serve it. This means we're going to not just make the front end of a website, but actually the back end of a website. So multiple users will be able to visit the website and see the same content and also update it. This really opens up the power of you as a web developer, because now you're going to be able to make much more complex sites, not just local games, but multiplayer games, and not just a to-do list that is one-time use only, but a to-do list that can be stored over time with an account, for example. All right, let's get started. In the next lecture, we're going to dive deep into coding with Node.js.
Hello everyone and welcome back to our course. In this lecture, we are discussing how to install Node and Npm onto a Mac or Windows computer. So join me at the website nodejs.org and go to the Download tab. There we can download Node, and also this includes Npm. So here you can choose your installer, a Windows installer or a Mac OS installer, or even the source code. So if you have a Windows computer, use the Windows installer. If you have a Mac computer, use the Mac OS installer. Here for Windows, there's also options for 32-bit versus 64-bit. Likely your version of Windows is 64-bit because 32-bit is outdated. So choose the 64-bit version or whichever one matches your computer, which is likely 64-bit. You can also install for Mac and even for Linux as well. Then just go through the steps of the installer. So you have to open up the MSI file or the package file, and you have to go through the steps of installation, just clicking through to install Node. And also NPM is going to be installed with Node. Then to check if you have Node and NPM, go to your terminal or command prompt or command line application. So here I am in my terminal, and I am going to check my Node version with the command node-v. Then I can check my version of NPM with npm-v. So you should get the results of which versions of Node and NPM you have. And if you don't, that means you have to reinstall or install in an alternate way. You can also install Node and NPM via version managers. The installer is not the only way. There are lots of ways to install Node and NPM. This is just the easiest. But if you're finding that the installer doesn't work, then you can try another option. Just go to the documentation for Node and NPM. And one thing to take note of is you should make sure to install Node and NPM into a global directory like users/your username, because that way you can use Node and NPM across all of the files inside of this folder. Because if you install Node and NPM into a subfolder, like just your project folder, then you'll only be able to use Node and NPM in that project folder. So you have to make sure to install it in some kind of global folder. And that is how you can install Node and NPM onto Mac, Windows, and as well Linux. And you can do that with the installer. So now that we have Node and NPM installed, we can put it to use in our project.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching this course. If you want to watch the rest of the course, the link is down below. Not only will you get the access to this course, but you'll get access to a lot of other courses in a huge bundle, and it's on sale today. So buy before the sale ends. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in another video.